Welcome to Dependable Flame, where we explore vintage petrol lighters, ashtrays, tobacciana, and other useful mechanisms. Make yourself at home. Today we are going to clear the flint tube in this vintage Ronson Rondette Jr. pocket lighter. I believe I have that identified correctly, thanks to a gentleman in the Ronson lighter group named David Shipman. I really appreciate that. This looks like your typical Ronson automatic setup, just like your Ronson Standard, Princess, Gem, all those. It is in a slipcase variety. There was a very dirty and stained red felt pad over the bottom of that slipcase insert. So we'll go ahead and start by removing the Fulcrum screw, which this lighter does not have a Fulcrum cap, only the threaded screw that threads into the backside post. Try to be careful there not to mar up the slot on your screwdriver as you remove that. Being very deliberate. Then you should be able to get your fingernail or something underneath it and pull that Fulcrum screw out. Make sure you already have your Flint Spring screw out at that point. Your Flint Spring, so that you don't have any undue upward tension on your mechanism. I'm going to disassemble this as we go and drop it all here into some 91% isopropyl alcohol. Has a very long post on that thumb lever. I think this lighter goes back to the mid-30s. If the posts on your lighter are stiff and don't want to let the snuffer mechanism go like this one did, you may have to work it or wiggle it out the front or the back. And you may also want to go ahead and take the soft end of a screwdriver or the handle of a small pair of pliers or something and just kind of wedge it between those posts to create a little space for when you put it back together. So we go ahead and pull the gears off the side of the snuffer assembly here and get them down into the alcohol. When we pull our file wheel out, and you can see that this file wheel has a collar installed in the middle of it, and the clutch spring is integrated into the top of the snuffer. Now we're going to take our lighter here and look at the blockage that we have in the top of that flint tube, and just a few spins of the 3/32 bit is going to break through that degraded flint, or it really wasn't all that concreted or caked in there. It was just sort of powdered, and most of it came out in one piece. So we work that in from both sides just to make sure it's clear. Get that all cleaned out, and then of course, as always, I will go ahead and use the toothpick. I usually use a flat end of a broken toothpick and a household disinfectant wipe to clean the crud and debris and buildup and whatever nastiness has been hiding up in there. So then we're also going to take all these parts that we had in the 91% isopropyl alcohol, go ahead and get them wiped off, dried off, in position, get our file wheel brushed with the soft brass brush, get the old flint off that wheel as clean as possible. And then we're going to go ahead and, while we're at it, pull up on our wick so that we have a nice new uncontaminated wick to deal with once we get ready to ignite this lighter. So then we are going to start, the way that I always start is with the thumb lever. Make sure that you have your piston spring in place and get your thumb lever down that shaft as it's supposed to. Then you want to start assembling your snuffer mechanism, which, as I said, the clutch spring is integrated into the top of this snuffer and engage with the teeth on the same side of the file wheel. As I said, there is also a collar that runs through this file wheel that is integrated. That feels a little bit unfamiliar to me, but it slides right in there just right. And then it also gives you a lot more leverage or purchase for your gears to hold in place, as they're not just sitting there in the little sprocket cutouts in the side of the snuffer, but they're also sitting over that collar that is going to run through the entire mechanism with the fulcrum screw. So you get that all together and held in place with your thumb and finger holding those gears from the side and slightly to the top. Get that lined up with your plunger thumb lever mechanism, and then slide it all down into place. Once you get everything slid down in there, you may have to get a pick or screwdriver to line it all up, but with this one, the fulcrum screw went all the way down the first time. Everything was lined up fine, so we will go ahead and get the screwdriver on that. Wasn't able to get it to go down with just my finger like I was hoping, so we'll get the precision screwdriver on there very carefully and go ahead and get that twisted all the way down. Not torquing it too tight, because then you would be putting that pressure inward on the entire mechanism, and it is not necessarily going to want to return to its closed, snuffed position if you have it too tight between those posts. And I thought I might have gotten this one too tight, but we're going to trim up that wick here in a moment, and then that mechanism is going to operate freely at that point. So I think I got it just about as tight as you would want to get it. We will go ahead now and take a flint, get that dropped down into the flint tube, which, as you saw earlier, has been cleared out of the old degraded flint. We will go ahead and get our red felt cover back in place before reinstalling the Flint Spring. So I go ahead and put that dirty looking contaminated side back inside with that old wadding, as I did not change the wick. We'll see if that may have to be done, and if so, then that will be for another video. We'll get our Flint Spring and Flint Spring screw then back down on top of the flint that we just put down the tube. And this spring was particularly contentious and did not want to go back down in there. So it took me a moment or two with my weak fingers to get that started, but once we got it going, then I'll get a screwdriver on it once I get that flint grooved in the right direction, which was not helped by the fact that I still needed to trim that wick, so that wick was getting in the way of me even seeing whether the lighter was sparking. So we have our Flint Spring screw tightened and the felt pad back in place. Now we will go ahead and trim up this wick so that the snuffer can go ahead and fall on down into the resting position like we need it to, so that it can move freely and snuff this flame once we ignite it. I don't know how much you guys worry about asbestos and inhaling it and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's all that big a deal when you're just using it to light whatever you're combusting. But when you're cutting on old wicks that may contain asbestos, I would be very careful. I would do my very best not to inhale it, and I would try to get that disposed of and out of the area where I might freely inhale it at any given moment. I don't know how much of a danger it really is on a day-to-day basis, but for those that use these kinds of products, the buildup over time, I think, is where the danger comes in for your personal health. So I would dispose of that. I would not leave it laying around. I wouldn't keep it anywhere where it might easily go from my fingers toward my nose or my mouth. As always, I overfill the lighter here with the petrol fuel, slide the insert back inside the round slip case, get the fuel dried off of my hand, and give it a whirl. Pretty cool little old lighter, even if it does take a moment or two here to light. Until next time.